Happening now on Grid Tonight. Kyle Busch is switching teams and manufacturers. Can Rowdy find success at his new home? And Joe Gibbs Racing really dropped the ball by letting him get away. Jeremy Clements won his appeal and gets to use his Daytona win to make the playoffs. How big of a deal is this for a small independent team? And which Xfinity drivers should be concerned heading to Bristol, the 2023 NASCAR schedule is here, and there's a surprising update to IndyCar silly season. What's happening on a really busy news week in motorsports? Hello to all of our viewers here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finishers. With me is Adam Lemerise and Ben Schneider. And a special shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Duchelle, and Robin. Thank you so much for investing in Grid Network. Link to our Patreon in the video description below. Please feel free to comment in the chat room, ask any questions you have, and engage in tonight's discussion. And we're going to kick off tonight's show with one of the biggest free agent signings in NASCAR since Dale Earnhardt Jr. left DEI for Hendrick Motorsports in 2008. So yesterday, it became official. After 15 years with Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota, Kyle Busch announced his departure at the end of the 2022 season. He'll be moving over to Richard Childress Racing in a reunion with General Motors to drive the number 8 Chevrolet full-time in 2023 and beyond. Richard Childress said he informed Tyler Reddick an hour before the press conference that he won't drive the number 8 car next year and that he started going after Busch following Reddick's surprise move to 2311 Racing in 2024. However, Reddick remains under contract with RCR for the 2023 season. The team plans to get a third charter for Reddick in a different car number. And the graphic you see on the screen, courtesy of RCR. Starting with you, Adam. Over the last several years, RCR has been improving their program and trying to return to the powerhouse organization they used to be. Will the signing of Kyle Busch help them take the next step?
Absolutely, it sure will. Because if you listen to the press conference, Richard Childress compared Kyle Busch to a driver that drove for him for a long time, the late great Dale Earnhardt Sr. So this is a really great move. And if you think about it, Kyle Busch before Joe Gibbs drove for Hendrick Motorsports. Hendrick Motorsports is a Chevrolet team. So you can kind of say Kyle Busch goes back to where to a Chevy team. So with this move, I think Kyle Busch can win multiple races next year, multiple championships, and do something that Dale Earnhardt Sr. only did once in his NASCAR career, and it took him 20 years. Win the Daytona 500. Surprisingly, Kyle Busch hasn't won it. With this move, I think Kyle Busch can finally take home the Harley J. Earl Trophy and win the Daytona 500.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Nobody doubts Kyle Busch's ability behind the wheel. Nobody doubts what he's already accomplished in his career. Two-time Cup Series champion, tens and tens of wins, and a future Hall of Famer, no doubt. The all-time wins leader in Xfinity and trucks, owns a successful truck team. Stop me whenever you like. In fact, I think, Adam, one of the only things he hasn't done is win the Daytona 500, and given RCR's success on super speedways in recent years, Austin Dillon's a two-time winner at Daytona now. I think that's certainly in the cards for him in the future. It's going to be interesting, though. When I think of RCR and the success they've had, the vast, vast majority of their wins have all come with Dale Earnhardt, like you mentioned, Adam, or with Kevin Harvick. I think after that, it's a tie between Jeff Burton or Clint Boyer. They're kind of in the same range there. I think it's something like only 5 or 6 wins. So aside from those two drivers, Harvick and Earnhardt, there really hasn't been a driver at RCR that's been a perennial championship contender in that car for that team, winning dozens of races and being a contender week in and week out at the level that they were at. Kyle Busch, I believe, can be that driver. It might take him a year or two to get used to a new environment. As you mentioned, Adam, he has driven for a Chevrolet team and General Motors before, so there is kind of a reunion sense there. I know RCR and Hendrick don't have too much in common beyond the manufacturer, but will be interesting to see if that reunion brings back any memories or anything like that for Kyle Busch. But I think he's mostly just focused on trying to get used to the new environment that he's going to be in over the next year. Look for him in 2024, 2025, though, to really start to take RCR back to the level that they were at when Harvick drove for them, and maybe even when Dale Earnhardt Sr. drove for them.
Yeah, and this is a massive, massive signing for RCR. And if you watch the press conference there, you have to really give a lot of credit to Austin Dillon for really setting this in motion, to take the first step, making the phone call to reach out. We've seen in the media the last several months how it seems like negotiations between Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing seem to be breaking down, and there seemed to be an opportunity for another team to swoop in and take Kyle Busch from Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota. Austin Dillon was able to set up the meeting between Kyle Busch and Richard Childress. They're able to come to a deal and make this happen right here. Kyle Busch driving for Richard Childress Racing in that number 8 Chevrolet. And it's certainly going to be interesting watching Kyle Busch in the next few years to see how he gets along at RCR. And I tend to agree with Ben. Next year might be, a year of growing pains for Kyle Busch, getting used to the new environment, how RCR operates compared to Joe Gibbs Racing. But once he gets that year under his belt and beyond, like you said, watch out. Kyle Busch might be able to take RCR back to the level when Harvick was there, or as you guys have already said, maybe to the elite level that the company was when Dale Earnhardt was driving that black number 3 car. If I'm Richard Childress, Austin Dillon, I have to be very excited to have this guy on my team because Kyle Busch is going to make Richard Childress Racing get much better. And now focusing on Tyler Reddick's situation, it certainly isn't an ideal one right now at Richard Childress Racing. Originally, RCR set up the number 8 team with the vision of Reddick being the lead driver and building around him for years to come. Then Reddick surprised everyone at RCR and signed with 2311 Racing instead, making his final year at RCR in 2023 a lame duck year. It's been made clear for a while now that Richard Childress didn't appreciate the way that Reddick handled business. Losing the number 8 Chevrolet means he won't be working with his championship-winning crew chief from the Xfinity Series anymore. Randall Burnett is going to stay on to be Kyle Busch's crew chief, with RCR reportedly planning to put Reddick in a third car with the charter for 2023. This prompted an interesting response from Denny Hamlin, who said, "Congratulations to Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing. This is a great opportunity for both parties to team up and win races for years to come. Thank you, Kyle, for being such a great teammate for the last 15 years. Good luck to you on the next chapter of your career. The timing could not be better." And that's Denny Hamlin right there, having a little fun with RCR's statement after Tyler Reddick signed with 2311 Racing, saying that the timing could not be any worse. And Ben, starting with you, could 2023 end up being a difficult year for Tyler Reddick, or is it realistic to suggest that Denny Hamlin may lead 2311 Racing to buy out the last year of his contract? And we all know all of that depends on what happens with Kurt Busch and his health.
I just can't believe Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch have been teammates for 15 years. I mean, I think you think of how much change has happened in the Cup Series. They've been two of the mainstays that have stayed in their same rides, and they've been teammates of Joe Gibbs. So there's been a lot of stability there, and that's all going to change in the next couple of years, obviously, now with Kyle Busch leaving. But for Tyler Reddick, I think the best case scenario is probably Toyota coming in to buy out the last year of his contract so that he's not stuck at RCR. Now, I know Richard Childress said that there's a third charter in place. I know he said they have a contract with Tyler Reddick to run, but there's a couple of things that have opened up here that lead me to believe there might be a scenario where Reddick can go to 2311 a year early. Kobe, like you mentioned, Kurt Busch's health is still a major question mark. At this point, we haven't heard anything in a couple of weeks. It's sounding more likely that he might sit out the rest of the season. I think, to be honest, if you want my opinion on it, obviously I had no insider's knowledge. I don't know Kurt personally. I don't know where he is in his recovery, but based on how long he's been out already, I'm not sure it would make much sense for him to come back this late in the season and risk re-aggravating an injury like that, as serious as a concussion would be. I think he should probably just take the rest of the season at this point, especially now that he is no longer competing for a championship in the playoffs. But we'll see where he is in 2023. If Kurt decides he's got nothing left to prove, he's had a great career, he doesn't want to risk the injuries, especially with the safety questions around the next-gen car, I think that opens up an avenue for Tyler Reddick to maybe go to 2311 a year early. There's also the situation regarding Ty Gibbs. You could argue, based on how Ty Gibbs has run in limited starts that he's had, based on how he's running in the Xfinity Series, especially if he goes out and wins the Xfinity Series championship, he might already, at the age of nearly 20 years old, he'll be 20 come time for the offseason, he might be ready to take that step to the Cup Series. Now, Gibbs may want to hold him back for a year. He may not want to make the same mistake with his grandson that he made with Joey Logano and moving him up too early, although Logano was even younger than Ty Gibbs is now when he made that jump. So Ty still has a couple of years on Joey, so it might be a little bit easier for him to make that transition. But when it comes to Ty Gibbs here, he now has an 18 seat that is open for him that's going to need to be filled. What's Joe Gibbs Racing going to do with that seat? So there's an avenue for Ty Gibbs to go in if Joe Gibbs and Toyota decide that he is ready to move up to the Cup Series, which, again, with no Kurt Busch, if he retires, no Ty Gibbs to worry about if he goes to the 18, that second seat at 2311 Racing would be open for Tyler Reddick to slide into it a year early. So that, to me, is the best case scenario. If he does end up staying at RCR, I've got a feeling it might be a bit of a down year for him. I think RCR is obviously going to prioritize Kyle Busch, obviously the big new free agent that they just signed, and Austin Dillon. We know he's a mainstay at RCR, so I don't know that Tyler Reddick would necessarily be getting priority, getting the best equipment if he stays and sees out this contract here through the end of 2023. If I were him, I would try to do everything in my power to try to get to 2311 a year early. We'll see if he's able to do so.
Yeah, Ben, I agree with everything you said. If I'm Tyler Reddick, I find a way to get to 2311 Racing early, a year early as well. And hopefully Kurt Busch can come back to the NASCAR Cup Series. It's going to take a lot for him to do. So if he can't come back, I think Tyler Reddick would be really good in that 45 car. In talking about Ty Gibbs, he's been a sensational driver in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. So much talent. So I think we're going to see Ty Gibbs in the Cup Series next year, driving that number 18 car. So it's going to, so 2023 for Tyler Reddick is going to be a very interesting one. He won't have his crew chief next year, so he's going to have to. So he's going to have someone else in his ear. Since so next year for Tyler Reddick is going to be interesting.
Yeah, next year could be a real bumpy ride for Tyler Reddick. Like Ben was saying, RCR is going to do everything they can to get Kyle Busch up to speed, and obviously him and Austin Dillon are going to be priority. And if Reddick's forced to drive for RCR next year, that's obviously going to be a lame duck year, an uncomfortable situation. You may even argue that RCR may even give him the R&D car, just trying things, and if something blows up, oh well, we're just trying this for the future. And I think it could be a really difficult 2023 for Reddick. So I think that his best option right now is to really, really do everything he can to try to get to 2311 Racing. And like I was saying, it really depends on what happens with Kurt Busch. If he's going to come back next year, I know Denny Hamlin already said, when Kurt's healthy, the 45 car is his to return for next year. And if it's this season, obviously it will be the number 2023 car. And the situation, if Kurt Busch is able to come back and wants to, race for one last year in 2023, and then that would be a real difficult situation for 2311 Racing, because then they have to try to get a third charter and for Reddick, and then if you don't get the charter, you may want to debate whether or not you want to run an open car or not, but that might not be an option since they'd be losing a lot of money not just running an open car until you can find a charter. And like you were saying, Ben, about Ty Gibbs, about Joe Gibbs not wanting to make the same mistake he made with Joey Logano, moving him up too early and then potentially setting himself up for failure. Something else they could possibly do if Kurt Busch was able to return is to put Tyler Reddick in the 18 car at Gibbs for 1 year and then move him over to 2311 Racing, and Ty Gibbs will go to the 18 of the following year after running Xfinity Series for another year. So that very well could be something that they could look at, and this is certainly quite an interesting situation we'll be following over the next few weeks and months. I'm sure we're going to have an answer by the end of this calendar year. But at the beginning of the year, everybody expected Kyle Busch to re-sign with Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota, a place we expected Busch to retire and keep the relationship going after he stepped away from full-time racing in the future. We knew M&M's was leaving NASCAR, JGR, and the number 18 Toyota. So they've had plenty of time to find Busch a sponsor, but the deal just did not get done. Now the highly successful partnership is over between JGR, TRD, Kyle Busch, and the number 18. And here's a statement right here from Joe Gibbs saying that Kyle has been a major part of our history and success here at Joe Gibbs Racing. We're thankful for his contributions to our organization over the years. When you look at all that he has accomplished already, it's truly remarkable, and we know someday we'll be celebrating his Hall of Fame induction. We also know he still has many more achievements in our sport ahead of him, including competing for the championship this season with Kyle, Samantha, Brexton, and Lennox, the very best. And we also have a statement from David Wilson, the president of TRD, saying Toyota and TRD are privileged to have raced with Kyle Busch, one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. We certainly wish Kyle the best of luck in the future and congratulate him on his announcement to join Childress Racing. We're disappointed and saddened that his future won't continue with Team Toyota. Kyle has been an ambassador for Toyota since joining the program in 2008. He's gone on to accumulate some of the most prestigious milestones possible for the Toyota brand, including our first Cup Series win for the Camry and first Cup Series championship. He will undoubtedly hold the record for most wins in a Toyota across all 3 championship series for decades to come. But more than that, Kyle has been a friend, part of our family, and has played a key role in many of our drivers through his ownership of Kyle Busch Motorsports. We wish nothing but the best for Kyle and his entire family as he moves into the next chapter of his Hall of Fame career. We're thankful to have been along for the ride. So right there, David Wilson, president of TRD. And starting with you, Ben, months ago, you said over and over you expected a deal to get done, no matter how late it took. No way Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota would let Kyle Busch get away, even if it took until the 11th hour. So, is it shocking to see how this breakup unfolded?
Yeah, I've got to eat crow. I did not see this coming at all. And I thought back to, when Lowe's left Jimmy Johnson and Hendrick, that they were searching all season for a sponsor and there were concerns as to whether or not they were going to get a deal done. And Jimmy's obviously a Hendrick driver for life. There's no way he's going to leave. And then Ally comes on, I think it was sometime in October, very late towards the end of the season. So the deal took a while, but it got done. I was expecting something similar to happen here. I thought for sure Toyota will step up if they have to. Toyota has plenty of deals, plenty of sponsors, many of whom work with KBM. They just signed a massive deal with Yahoo. Gibbs obviously goes way back with Interstate Batteries. Maybe they could step up and do a few more races than they've been doing or do a full season like they used to in that 18 car. I think there were even rumors that Oracle was interested in sponsoring for the full season or something like that. I mean, there were all these sponsors and all these candidates that I thought one of them for sure will step up and keep Kyle Busch a Joe Gibbs Racing driver until he retires. And it simply did not happen. And it's very surprising to me that he's made this career change. I thought he was going to retire at Gibbs. I thought he was going to retire with Toyota. I thought there's absolutely no way this deal doesn't get done, even if it takes to the 11th hour. I'm not as shocked as I was last week when we heard that the deal was all but finalized, that there was an announcement coming. But, for Kyle to make this career change from Joe Gibbs Racing to RCR, what I think a lot of people would consider taking a step back based on how they performed in recent years. I know RCR is on the way back up, but they haven't been at the level that Gibbs has been at, certainly since Kyle's been there and since they became the flagship team for Toyota. So, like I said earlier in the show, it's going to be very interesting to see how this sorts out. I know Kyle's obviously a fantastic driver. RCR has a lot of history. I'm sure their partnership will be a successful one, but I am still kind of surprised that a deal didn't get done, even though we've had the announcement in the works for some time now. I still don't really know what else to say. I mean, I thought for sure Kyle Busch was going to retire at Joe Gibbs Racing, and that's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, Ben, I'm with you. It's like I thought Kyle Busch would retire from Joe Gibbs Racing, Toyota. I mean, you think about Rowdy Energy Drink could have sponsored the number 18 Toyota. I mean, it is a Kyle Busch sponsor. I mean, there you go. And I'm surprised the deal didn't get done. This is shocking. This is to me. Our own Joe Amigo says, "I'm not surprised." Oh, okay, Joe. All right. I mean, yeah, this is kind of shocking. I thought Kyle Busch would remain a Joe Gibbs Racing driver, a Toyota driver for a long time, win many more championships and races. But not going to happen after this year. But we can say good luck to him in this new opportunity at Richard Childress Racing, driving the number 8 car. So yeah, I thought Kyle Busch would have been a Toyota racing driver until he retires, and I'm shocked it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Adam, I think a lot of people were shocked, and Joe also has. He wish he could be on the air with us tonight, and I really wish he could be on here as well. Joe, I'm sure Adam and Ben feel the same way, but at least you're doing the next best thing, chiming in the chat room. I'm sure you'll be sharing your thoughts throughout tonight's show, and in response to the shock of Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing breaking up, did anybody else see Tom Brady moving on to the Bucks? We all thought Tom Brady would play for the New England Patriots forever under owner Robert Kraft and head coach Bill Belichick. No, we said Brady would retire as a member of the Patriots, just like we said that Peyton Manning would retire as a member of the Indianapolis Colts. But look what happened. Sometimes what you expect to happen ends up not happening. And although a partnership has been successful for so many years, business comes in the way, or people have other interests, and you just have to move on. It's all a part of the game of sports business, and this is just the way it turned out with Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota divorcing. And as Joe Gibbs said in a statement, years from now, when Kyle Busch has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, I'm sure they're all gonna come back together and share the memories from all the good times they had. They have nothing to be ashamed of. They did so much together, and this is something they should be proud of, because so few people in NASCAR are able to do what they've done together. So they should be really happy for a job well done, and for these next several weeks together, try to go out there, try to win at least one more race together, try to see how far you can go into the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, because there's still a lot that they can do in just a short amount of time as they conclude their long 15-year relationship. And one of the biggest questions coming to yesterday's press conference was about the future of Kyle Busch Motorsports, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series team that has been the perfect place for Toyota to develop his young drivers. With Kyle Busch becoming a Chevrolet driver, he confirmed that KBM plans to continue competing in the Truck Series, but they'll be switching manufacturers, obviously, from Toyota to Chevrolet. Richard Childress even has plans for Kyle's son, 7-year-old Brexton Busch, offering him a contract to drive for RCR someday when he's old enough. And there is some uncertainty about the future of KBM drivers John Hunter Nemechek, Chandler Smith, and Corey Haim. Where will they land? Toyota has options, though, for their development. Drivers ThorSport Racing and Hattori Racing Enterprises could be an option, which could displace some of their current drivers. Or could we see Joe Gibbs Racing start up a Truck Series program to pick up where KBM left off? And I feel like this is a great topic for Ben, our producer of Grid Live Encore, that covers the Truck Series closely. Will ThorSport and Hattori step up for Toyota, and will Chevrolet benefit in the same way as TRD by having their young prospects get valuable experience with the top-notch KBM organization?
First of all, I hope my internet's okay. I just saw it dipped for a second, so apologies in advance if that happens again. But, I think this is a point that is maybe getting lost in all this in the wider NASCAR discussion. Not only is Toyota losing Kyle Busch, they're also losing their flagship truck team. You think of any time a Cup Series driver has owned a truck team, which has not been that uncommon in NASCAR history. Brad Keselowski used to have a truck team. Kevin Harvick had a truck and Xfinity team, Kevin Harvick Incorporated. Every time it makes sense for the manufacturer to be the one that the Cup Series driver competes with in the Cup Series. So obviously Kyle Busch Motorsports was a Toyota team. Brad Keselowski Racing was a Dodge Ram team, and then a Ford team when Penske moved over to Ford. Kevin Harvick Incorporated was a Chevy team when he was at RCR. So, when you look at this move that Kyle Busch is making here, it would make sense that Chevrolet would pick up Kyle Busch Motorsports, and it sounds like they're going to, which is good for everybody under Kyle Busch's umbrella of development drivers. But what happens to Toyota now? Toyota now obviously have a lot of drivers involved with TRD, and we make the point all the time on this show about how they have a lot of development drivers, but only 6 Cup teams to put them in. So you see a lot of times drivers like Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland, they end up having to go somewhere else or switch to other manufacturers. They move up because there simply aren't enough seats for them. So Toyota already has hard enough time keeping their drivers when they get to the Cup Series. Now, if the Truck Series team has gone away, yes, absolutely, ThorSport and Hattori are going to have to step up. And, it's going to be interesting because ThorSport, I think, has kind of been known as a place for veteran drivers like your Matt Craftons or Grant Empfingers. Johnny Sauter obviously has driven for them for many years. So, will ThorSport continue to be that kind of team, or will they be forced to take on a couple of TRD drivers if they want to remain a flagship Toyota Truck Series team? I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered there. Kyle Busch Motorsports also took over Joe Gibbs' ARCA program this year. So, there's a lot of pieces that still have to fall into place. I'm sure we're going to get some answers as the calendar year winds down and things settle in for 2023. Kyle Busch going to RCR, making that official, was the first major piece that had to fall, the first major domino that had to fall. And I think all the rest of the pieces of the puzzle will come together soon enough. But this is a major loss, not just losing Kyle Busch, but losing Kyle Busch Motorsports. That's absolutely huge for Toyota. It's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to that going forward.
Yeah, and I certainly have to say, if I'm a driver for Hattori or ThorSport right now, I'm actually going to be really nervous the next few weeks, because those are really the only options right now available for Toyota to place their young development drivers. And in terms of Kyle Busch Motorsports' current drivers, that was a departure today from Joe Gibbs Racing's NASCAR Xfinity Series program, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But it looks like Joe Gibbs Racing might have an entirely brand new lineup in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And when you look at the current drivers at KBM, Corey Haim is running most of the races in that 51 truck. Chandler Smith, John Hunter Nemechek. There could be 3 spots available in Joe Gibbs Racing next year at the Xfinity Series, and you could easily move up all of those drivers if you really wanted to. And then you have young Sammy Smith, who's in the equation as well. So there certainly could be some opportunities for Toyota drivers to move up into the NASCAR Xfinity Series from the KBM program there. And you mentioned, Ben, ThorSport's been a place known for veteran drivers, and I'm wondering, could any of those veteran drivers who are currently with the team now get pushed out in favor of some of those young drivers like a Ben Rose, a Matt Crafton, Ty Majeski, and then also Hattori Racing expanded to a two truck team. Tyler Ankrum, Chase Purdy. It hasn't really been a good year for those guys, so I'm wondering if they could be on the hot seat if there's a young Toyota prospect who could be in line to move up next time around. And Kyle Busch, getting back to him, he's accomplished so much throughout his NASCAR Cup Series career, over 200 wins in the top 3 series. He's the all-time wins leader in trucks and Xfinity, won an Xfinity championship, 2 Cup championships, Crown Jewel wins in the Brickyard 400, Southern 500, and Coca-Cola 600. The only thing Busch hasn't accomplished in NASCAR is winning the Daytona 500 and the Truck Series championship. However, there's one major bucket list item outside of NASCAR that he wants to compete in, like his brother Kurt Busch did in 2014, the Indianapolis 500. Busch's contract with Joe Gibbs Racing made running the Indy 500 nearly impossible, so he wanted to make sure his next contract included the freedom of finding a seat for the greatest spectacle in racing. Since he'll be a Chevrolet driver in 2023, his new deal with Richard Childress Racing gives him the okay to pursue an Indianapolis 500 drive with any Chevrolet-powered team in the NTT IndyCar Series. And some of the top Chevy teams in IndyCar are Team Penske, Ed Carpenter Racing, and Arrow McLaren SP. Roger Penske typically likes to focus on their full season drivers during the month of May, but they've entered an additional Indy only entry before. Bringing a NASCAR star like Kyle Busch might be intriguing to the captain. Ed Carpenter Racing, they filled an extra car for Danica Patrick in her final career race in 2018. They bring fast Chevys to the speedway every May. Then you have Arrow McLaren SP. This feels like a Zach Brown type of story. He likes to make a splash, like to be in the headlines. Brown played a major role in bringing Fernando Alonso to Indy, and surely he wouldn't shy away from putting Kyle Busch in a McLaren Chevrolet. Aaron McLaren SP is running 3 cars full-time next year, and possibly a 4th for Indy only, a seat that Juan Pablo Montoya's had for the last couple of years. Adam, could you see Kyle Busch in the Indy 500 as soon as next year, and do you agree this would be the kind of splash signing Zach Brown would make for McLaren?
Oh, yeah. Kyle Busch has said he's always wanted to compete in the Indy 500. Well, if I'm Kyle Busch, I get a hold of Zach Brown. Kyle Busch has a sponsor he could use, Rowdy Energy Drink. So you put Rowdy Energy Drink on an Arrow McLaren SP Indy car, and there you go. You run the Indy 500. I mean, you could join your brother. In fact, if Kyle Busch wants to, he can do it. His brother did in 2014 and run the double. Only 4 drivers have done it, so why not Kyle Busch be the 5th one? I think, I could see it happening next year. Why not? This is a race Kyle Busch wants to compete in. Well, if I'm Zach Brown, I let Kyle Busch's dream become a reality. And one thing that Kurt Busch didn't have when he drove in the Indy 500 in 2014 that Kyle Busch would have on his NTT IndyCar would be the Arrow screen. The Arrow screen has saved lives a lot, and that's one big safety factor that's on the IndyCars now. It wasn't when Kurt drove in 2014. So if I'm Kyle Busch, I get a hold of Zach Brown and say, hey, I want to run the Indy 500. Let me fulfill my dream and run in the greatest spectacle in racing.
I just want to say I miss the days where things were much simpler and we didn't have all these different parties getting involved and having to make sure things were sorted, because you think back to when Tony Stewart did a double. Who was Tony Stewart driving for in the Cup Series when he did the double in 1999, 2001? He was driving for Joe Gibbs. Now Kyle Busch wants to do the double, and Joe Gibbs puts his foot down and says no. Also, when Kurt did the double, I just found this interesting. Never made this connection before, but the two manufacturers in IndyCar, Chevrolet and Honda, Kurt drove for a team that at the time was still running Chevrolet since Stewart-Haas Racing, and Andretti Autosport. If I recall correctly, I think they went to Chevrolet when they came into the series, but by 2014, they were back to a Honda team. So Kurt was having a conflict of interest there that clearly he was able to get around. So it's a shame that Kyle hasn't been able to do that. It's a shame that Kyle Larson still hasn't made an Indy 500 start. I know that he really wants to do that, and it sounds like talks may be progressing there. But I think Kyle would certainly be a contender at the Indianapolis 500 if he had enough time to get up to speed. And I think Zach Brown is the perfect candidate to make a deal like that happen. It seems like McLaren is signing pretty much every driver under the sun right now to some sort of contract. So why not get in discussions with Kyle Busch, try to make a deal happen? I think it could be a really good partnership.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben. I think it would be an excellent partnership for Kyle Busch, being a McLaren driver, and McLaren. I think this could be something, that could be really major if you put Kyle Busch with McLaren. I see that as possibly the most likely scenario if Kyle Busch runs the Indianapolis 500, because, like I said, this is a Zach Brown type of story. This is something Zach Brown would do. He wants to bring in the big name. He wants his team to be in the headlines. And if Kyle Busch is going to be running the Indianapolis 500, it's certainly going to bring a lot of eyes from NASCAR onto Indy. Since in a similar way, we saw all the F1 eyes on Fernando Alonso when he ran the greatest spectacle in racing. And do I see Kyle Busch running the Indy 500 next year? I'm actually not so sure. I think it would be cool for it to happen as soon as possible. And I'm wondering if Kyle just wants to take year one, get used to RCR and get himself deeply involved with that, and feel to a point where he's feeling comfortable enough where he can focus on his NASCAR Cup program at RCR and then go over to IndyCar to try to put together a deal to run the double, the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in the same day. So we're certainly going to be interested to see if an IndyCar team will come calling. Kyle Busch said, since he's a Chevrolet driver now, IndyCar teams, if you're listening, come call me, because Kyle Busch is ready to run the Indy 500, and he has approval in his contract to do so.
And it turns out Kyle Busch is not the only driver leaving Joe Gibbs Racing in Toyota after the season. NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Brandon Jones is doing the same. After 5 years driving the number 19 Toyota, Jones will leave JGR at the end of the season in the Xfinity Series. He'll be moving over to Junior Motorsports, replacing Noah Gragson in the number 9 Chevrolet beginning in 2023. Jones is a 5-time Xfinity race winner and has 7 full seasons under his belt, which gives the organization valuable experience. Jones and Sam Mayer have been confirmed at JRM, while both Justin Allgaier and Josh Berry are expected to return as well. And the graphic on your screen is courtesy of Junior Motorsports.
And after winning the Xfinity race at Daytona a few weeks ago, Jeremy Clements was issued a L2 level penalty for violating sections 14.6.12 KNU of the NASCAR rulebook, which pertains to the intake manifold. Clements also got docked 75 owner points and 75 driver points 10 playoff points if he won another race, plus crew chief Mark Setzer got fined $60,000. Clements was allowed to keep the win, but it wouldn't count towards his postseason eligibility. Yesterday, the National Motorsports Appeals Panel decided to overturn the ruling, allowing Clements to win the appeal and lock themselves into the NASCAR Xfinity Series playoffs. And here's a statement right here from Jeremy Clements Racing Center. Our small family-owned team works hard to bring safe, legal, and competitive cars to the racetrack every week and are pleased that the previous ruling was overturned. We remain focused on competing for the 2022 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship and appreciate the continued support of our fans and sponsors. This Friday night is the final race of the NASCAR Xfinity Series regular season at Bristol Motor Speedway. With Clements now locked into the playoffs, Colic Racing's Landon Castle's officially the last driver in, 19 points above the cut line over Ryan Sieg. Richard Childress Racing Sheldon Creed is next in line, 32 points below the cut line. Ben, was it shocking to see Jeremy Clements Racing win the appeal, and should Landon Castle be worried about Ryan Sieg or Sheldon Creed jumping him for the final playoff spot?
Well, I wouldn't say it was shocking. It's not unprecedented for these appeals to be overturned. If I recall correctly, I think Matt Crafton had a finish reinstated earlier this year. Noah Gragson, I think, has had one as well since these new rules have taken place. Obviously, Clements didn't lose his finish, but he still obviously had a massive fine and points penalty and had his playoff eligibility taken away. But it's not necessarily common. It's not super common that we even see appeals. I don't believe Joe Gibbs Racing even appealed their 1-2 finish disqualification in a Cup Series race when that happened to Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember them even going through an appeal process for that, let alone having it overturned. So, the fact that it got overturned is a little bit more surprising to me. I'm thinking back to when Nice Motorsports won that race at Iowa with Ross Chastain. I think that banner is still hanging in their shop to this day. They insist that they won that race, even though they lost their appeal. So, it is very uncommon to see, if an appeal happens, to see it actually overturned and everything reinstated. So it's great news for Clements. I think it's a little bit surprising for some teams that are on the bubble there. And if you've got it, let's take into consideration who's on the bubble here. Kobe, you mentioned Landon Castle driving for Colleague, a team that put a car in the championship for last year with AJ Allmendinger. Could well do that again this year. He's leading the regular season championship right now. And you've got Sheldon Creed driving a car that just won an Xfinity championship 3 years ago with Tyler Reddick. Ryan Sieg is on a fraction of the budget of those teams. He's an independent driving for his family-owned team, and he is in that battle right now, sandwiched between Castle and Creed, who have a much bigger budget, much better equipment in theory than Ryan Sieg would. So if you're Ryan Sieg, it's a victory just to make the playoffs. I'm sure that that's their goal at the beginning of the season, to just try to, eke out a win here or there, try to pick up a victory maybe at a track like a super speedway, or run consistently enough that they can point their way in if there aren't a lot of winners. If you're a Landon Castle, if you're a Sheldon Creed, I think your season's unequivocally a failure. I know that sounds harsh, but they're driving for teams where this shouldn't even be a worry for them. And yet here they are on the bubble with a team fighting above their weight, as Ryan Sieg's team usually does. So with Jeremy Clements being put back in, I feel like usually we see one of the independents, whether it's a Brandon Brown or a Jeremy Clements or a Ryan Sieg, they might squeak their way into the playoffs every year. Clements has now taken that spot. Is there room for a second with Ryan Sieg? There very well may be with this points battle here. Landon Castle and Sheldon Creed, going into Bristol here this week, I would not be feeling super comfortable if I were them. I think they're going to have to give 110% and make sure that they're pushing as hard as they can, because quite frankly, I don't think there's room for both of them on this playoff bubble here. Forgive me, I'm not sure exactly who's ahead of him. I think it might actually be his colleague teammate Daniel Hemrick, the defending champion, who's kind of on that bubble as well. But for Sheldon Creed in particular, I know he had that great run at Darlington not so long ago, but your teammate Austin Hill is also a rookie. He's won a couple of races this year. It's not a good situation. It's not a good look if you miss the playoffs.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a good look at all if he ends up missing the playoffs. And it's really surprising to see how far Colleague Racing has fallen in terms of their performance. I wonder if adding the Cup Series program had anything to do with their Xfinity program falling off. And it's really crazy, that Landon Castle, if Sheldon Creed or Ryan Sieg end up winning at Bristol, Landon Castle going to be out of the playoffs, and then Daniel Hemrick, he's just a few spots ahead of of Castle, and basically AJ Allmendinger is carrying that team on his back right now, while Castle and the defending champion Hemrick are really struggling right now. And when you look at the point situation right now, especially with Castle and Sieg, if Landon Castle has issues and Ryan Sieg brings the best race car he's had all season, gets those stage points, and Castle has some real bad luck. You could very well see you could see Ryan Sieg, potentially jump Castle. I still think Landon Castle is going to make it in, but who knows? Sheldon Creed's been running really well lately. He could have very well won that race at Darlington until the contact with Kyle Larson put an end to that. But I think looking forward to the races Friday night. Keep your eye on the last spot to make into the Xfinity Series playoffs. I think Sheldon Creed, particularly him, could make this really interesting. Before we go into the next thing, got a little bit of breaking news. I'm gonna post right here on the screen. Have a statement here from Jesse Little saying, "I want to thank each fan, friend, and partner and family member that has helped me pursue my dream of being a race car driver. Thank you all the shared smiles and successes. The relationships I built with people in the industry will last forever, as well as all the memories made in and around the track. When I was a kid, I would have never imagined living this life, and I want to thank you all for helping me do so. I'm excited to begin a new career after this weekend's race at Bristol, and while I won't be climbing in race cars anymore, I'll still be at the track, and I look forward to seeing you all there." So right there during our show, Jesse Little announces that he's going to be retiring from racing. I want to give a shout out to our great network colleague Matthew Bro for bringing that to our attention. So thank you, Matthew, for that. Jesse Little's retiring.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Kobe. And now we'll go over to a brief update on a story we've been following in MotoGP. After many expected him to miss the remainder of the 2022 MotoGP season, Marc Marquez shared an exciting update with the world. Following a successful 2-day test at Misano and an intense training program, Marquez has been cleared to return to racing this weekend at the Aragon Grand Prix, 110 days after he last raced in the Italian Grand Prix and a successful fourth surgery on his right arm. Marquez's goals in his return to racing are to focus on improving bike fitness and accessing his performance during the intensity of a Grand Prix weekend and race. And the photo on your screen is courtesy of MotoGP. Now we'll go back to Kobe for an update on NASCAR and IndyCar's silly season and the schedule that was released today for NASCAR in 2023.
Yeah, so this afternoon, NASCAR released a 2023 schedule for the top 3 national series. We'll be evaluating the schedule for each series and pointing out what's notable. And starting with the NASCAR Cup Series, you don't really see many changes on next year's schedule. Texas Motor Speedway loses the All-Star race to North Wilkesboro Speedway. Texas will have one race date in 2023, hosting a playoff race in September. There's an off weekend for Father's Day. The Chicago Street Course race replaces Road America on 4th of July weekend. The Atlanta race in July will run on Sunday night under the lights. The second race at Richmond moves to the end of July, and the IMS Road Course NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader race weekend returns on the weekend of August 13th. And now the NASCAR Xfinity Series, they'll have their own little 2-week West Coast swing that begins with a return to the Pacific Northwest at Portland International Raceway, the home of Grid Network, followed by a trip to wine country. Xfinity is headed to Sonoma Raceway. There's been some criticism about 2 weeks on the West Coast, hurting the smaller teams due to the cost. And if you look at the beginning of the schedule, you see that's the first West Coast swing. Then you have 2 more West Coast races later in the season there. So the Xfinity Series is going to have to go to the West Coast twice and during the early part of the season. And then 2 road courses there, back-to-back, Portland, Sonoma. Xfinity is also joining Cup on the streets of Chicago, a total of 8 road and street course races for Xfinity. Unlike Cup, Road America is stayed on the schedule July 29th. The same weekend, Trucks and Cup are at Richmond. The Talladega Fall Race disappears from the Xfinity calendar, meaning Bristol will open up the playoffs next year, and Kansas will become the regular season finale. And last but not least, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. At the beginning of April, we'll see the return of the Trucks IndyCar doubleheader weekend at Texas Motor Speedway. This means the IndyCar race won't conflict with the IMSA Mobile 112 Hours of Sebring, a wonderful thing for the IndyCar drivers who are looking to get an endurance seat. There's going to only be one dirt race on the schedule, Bristol Dirt, after a couple of tough years at Knoxville Raceway. That event has been dropped off the calendar entirely. The Trucks join Cup on All-Star Weekend for a race at North Wilkesboro Speedway. The series definitely getting back to its roots there. Richmond loses a playoff date for an old track returning to the schedule, the Milwaukee Mile, at the end of August. The playoffs will open at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park again on August 11th, a little bit later than the late July start time this year. Adam, what are your likes and dislikes from the 2023 NASCAR schedule?
Well, first of all, Kobe, can we put the Craftsman Truck Series schedule up on the screen for next year? One thing is, how cool is it to see North Wilkesboro and the Milwaukee Mile back on the schedule? It's been too long. I think the truck race at North Wilkesboro is going to be awesome with All-Star Weekend and the Milwaukee Mile. Man, now I just need the Xfinity Series and the IndyCar Series back there. Speaking of the Xfinity schedule for next year, kind of cool to see him go to Sonoma Raceway out there in California. Really nice schedule for the Xfinity Series. It's going to be a Chicago Street race. You'll probably see a lot of Cup drivers running that, and I know some people won't like that, but it'll give them some laps around there. And now the NASCAR Cup schedule for next year. Man, you talk about being on the road a lot. Only one off weekend, Father's Day. That's gonna be a lot of miles those hauler drivers are gonna be putting in. But the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro next year is gonna be awesome, cool, and I've seen online that it's been hard to get hotels near the area to stay for the All-Star race. So next year it's going to be cool to see the Truck Series go back to North Wilkesboro and the historic Milwaukee Mile. Bring it on.
Yeah, really exciting to see the Truck Series running the Cup Series on All-Star Weekend to race on the short track up in Wilkes County at North Wilkesboro Speedway, and it's still surprising to see it down there on paper that North Wilkesboro is really back on the calendar next year, and that's going to make a lot of people all over this country and world who love the history of this track very happy. And Adam, I'm actually happy you brought up the point about the one off weekend that they had, because Chase Elliott sent out a tweet responding to the schedule saying less equals more, and he also mentioned that he liked night races. I'm sure Chase Elliott is speaking for a lot of drivers in the garage that don't want to be on the road. How many weeks? 38 weeks out of the year, and they rather have less races so they can spend more time with their families and doing other things and possibly entering other racing events that they can compete in during their downtime. And NASCAR season has always been dubbed as one of the longest in professional sports since they go from February all the way to November, and then you have a very short off season. You have to get back at it again, and it can be very mentally draining, not just for drivers, but for the teams as well, and everyone working back at the shop to be on the road for so many months, week after week after week. So in the future, I'm wondering if NASCAR could consider shortening the Cup Series schedule. I think they could shorten it a little bit, go down from 38 weeks, counting the 36 points race and 2 exhibitions. I think they could possibly shorten it down to 30 and drop some dates so we don't have to go to every track twice. I think that would be a great compromise, to give them a few more off weekends. I think that would also stop some of the burnout we're seeing, where people, will leave the industry and move on to other things. I think we see a lot more people stick around longer if NASCAR decided to shorten the calendar. So I'm in agreement with Chase Elliott. I think less is more, because you're not racing every weekend. Your excitement will grow, and you'll just crave the next time you see NASCAR out on the racetrack. And moving on to some IndyCar Series silly season news, we reported on Grit Live Wrap Up just a couple of days ago that chances of recounseling taking place between two major players fighting it out in the courts. Well, it happened. Chip Ganassi Racing and Alex Palou have surprisingly come to an agreement to stay together in 2023. So Palou's going to stay on board as the driver of the number 10 Honda. This means Arrow McLaren SP is bringing Felix Rosenqvist back for another year, joining Alexander Rossi and Pato Award. And speaking of award, he's currently busy over at Barcelona with Alex Palou testing the McLaren Formula One car. Ganassi agreed to let Palou accept the contract with McLaren as an F1 test driver as long as it doesn't conflict with his IndyCar commitments. And the photos he saw, courtesy of Travis Hinkle and James Black from Penske Entertainment. Ben, are you stunned that Palou and Ganassi were able to settle their differences and continue their working relationship? Also, what are your thoughts on Rosenqvist staying with McLaren?
Well, again, I don't know if I go so far as to say stunned, but I am surprised that they came back together this quickly. I thought this was an announcement that we might see in November and December after some court things were settled and maybe, some deals were ironed out. I thought that would take a little bit longer than just a few days after the season wrapped up. But I don't know, maybe Alex Palou winning the season finale at Laguna Seca accelerated those talks and brought them back on good terms a little bit quicker than expected. But like I said, I never really understood why this was such a big deal in the first place for Palou, in particular, the defending series champion at the time, to make this career change. I thought the only way this makes sense is if McLaren had guaranteed him a spot on the F1 grid next year. So for Palou, I think this is a great move to be back with a team that he knows he can win a championship with. We'll see now that he still has a McLaren connection where talks go from there. You never know with, again, all the talent that McLaren is pulling together. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. And I'm also excited for Felix Rosenqvist. I think he's a great driver for the IndyCar series. I'm glad he's going to be back. And, I think it's probably best for him to be here rather than in a place like Formula E or something like that, like rumors were suggesting. So I think everybody wins in this deal. I guess the biggest surprise that I have is that everything just came together so quickly after the season ended.
Yeah, Ben, everything came together really quickly, and for the last couple of months or so, we went all around the tree, all around the neighborhood, and we're back exactly right where we started. Rosenqvist standing in 7 and Palou standing in 10. It's really crazy how we literally had to drive all the way across town just to reach the same place where we started, and we said that we in the past that we thought Palou would be that number one driver at Chip Ganassi Racing once Scott Dixon retires. And I'm wondering, with them working together in 2023, maybe that's not a lost cause yet, where Alex Palou can, continue to get back on Chip Ganassi's good terms 100%. So he can potentially be that number one driver for Chip Ganassi Racing and lead them into the future once Scott Dixon steps away. And got some comments here in the chat room from Joe Samaniego saying that he agreed with Chase Elliott that less races are actually more. And you also add that you feel like there's going to be additional pressure for Palou to perform and show he can contend for wins on the championship in 2023 and worthy of a spot in Chip Ganassi Racing long term if there's no F1 seat for him. And it was really nice to see Chip Ganassi able to give Alex Palou what he wanted there, to be able to test a Formula One car. And if there's an opportunity available to race in Formula One, maybe Palou will be able to take that up. But if not, he can continue to be a Chip Ganassi Racing driver. After that dominant performance at Laguna Seca just a few days ago, I was thinking to myself, like, this team, this driver, they work so well together. Why would you want to break up such a good thing? And I bet Chip Ganassi thought the same thing. And look where we are. Alex Palou, Chip Ganassi Racing gonna be together next year. And reportedly, Palou also got a big raise as well, and that's something he was also looking for, to get a raise, to be paid like a championship racing driver, and also be allowed to test a Formula One car when his IndyCar commitments don't directly conflict.
And finally, tonight, an update on Formula E. Sergio Seti Camara spent the first 2 full seasons of his Formula E career with Dragon Penske Autosport, but he's switching teams for season 9. Camara has signed a deal to join the Neo 333 Formula E team next season. He'll begin testing with the team later this weekend at Autodromo di Verano in Italy. Here's what Camara had to say in a graphic courtesy of Neo. I'm very happy to join the Neo 333 family, and I want to thank everyone in the team who believed in me for this opportunity. I have been very open about my wish to remain in the Formula E Championship, and I am super excited about the new Gen 3 car.
And that's it for tonight's episode of Grid Tonight. So please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after tonight's show and consider joining our Patreon. Invest in Grid Network to keep us on the air well into the future. Do you want to buy me a coffee? Click the link in the video description below and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at Grid Network. A big thank you to Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us one. We greatly appreciate it. Any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link below and referral code GridNet gives you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And now looking at our schedule coming up. We have a new episode of the Women in Motorsports later this week, and then Saturday Grid Live pre-race at noon Eastern, and Sunday Grid Live wrap-up is also going to take place at noon Eastern to recap MotoGP and the NASCAR Cup Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway, the Bristol night race from Saturday night. And we're definitely looking forward to that cutoff race in that round of 16. And it's Bristol, baby, so there's going to be tempers flaring, beating and banging. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about, and that's always a good thing for us in the media, looking for topics and all of that. So for Ben Schneider and Adam Lemerise, I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.